Robin Monteith, the University Library's Advancement and Engagement Officer. Welcome to the KC and to our first ever virtual talk and tour. We're delighted to have you with us. The University Libraries is pleased to be hosting a new exhibit entitled Nuggets, Short Stories about Nevada Mining, made possible through the generosity of International Gaming Technology, otherwise known as IGT. The exhibit features a variety of photos, documents, and other materials from our vast mining collections in special collections and university archives. Stories from the White Pine Mining District, American Flats, the evolution of mining technology, Boomtown bosses, and women in mining are just a few of the stories that are featured in the exhibit. Normally, to share the exhibit, we would be inviting you to campus and we would meet in the Knowledge Center's Leonard Room, sipping on some lemonade and enjoying a cookie or two before settling in to hear our featured speaker. Afterwards, we would head downstairs to the exhibit for a short tour to see the exhibit materials in person. Unfortunately, that's not possible right now with the pandemic. So we thought we would try and share the exhibit with you in a virtual way. Over the next 15 minutes, Jackie Sundstrand from Special Collections and University Archives and the curator of the Western Shoshone Defense Project portion of the exhibit will be giving you a little background on the project. She's selected a handful of images from the exhibit that are key to understanding the Western Shoshone Defense Project, and she'll be showcasing those while adding a little context. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to the Special Collections and University Archives Department at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm Jackie Sundstrand, the Manuscripts and Archives Librarian here in Special Collections. For those of you unfamiliar with our department, we acquire historic materials mainly through donations from individuals and families, organizations, and businesses. We preserve them, organize them, and make them accessible to anyone interested in using them. Our materials are open to not just our campus community of users, but are open to all. Our collections document all aspects of Nevada's history and culture, including materials relating to Great Basin peoples, such as the Washoe, Paiute, and Shoshone. We focus now mainly on northern Nevada, and our sister campus in Las Vegas covers the southern portion of the state. These materials from individuals and families, which we refer to as papers, may include all sorts of items such as letters, photographs, maps, and the like. The materials from organizations or businesses we call records. All of these materials are what are referred to as primary sources. These are first-hand accounts and materials from which to better understand what happened or why such an event took place. They are the building blocks of information for anyone wanting to read and or write about our state's history. In working with our donors in preparing their materials, an archivist such as myself has to understand as much as possible in order to organize them for you, the user. Whenever possible, we work with our donors to answer our questions, as well as reading and checking the materials we have before us. Consequently, we place the materials into as much of an order which makes sense, and we prepare a written guide to each collection, which explains more of the historical context about what you will find in a collection. I met with Carrie Dam when she decided to donate the Western Shoshone Defense Project records, which she and her sister Mary had saved through decades of their fight to save Western Shoshone ancestral lands and their cultural traditions. I assisted in the processing of this very large collection, about 120 boxes, one of a group of people who did so. I'd like to tell you about this aspect of our mining exhibit, which deals with the Western Shoshone Defense Project from what I know. But I want to remind you that I am an archivist, not a member of the Western Shoshone Nation. So my commentary is meant to help you see what we found within the Defense Project's actions and records. Our exhibit is only able to showcase a very small part of the decades-long story. Let's begin. On this map of Nevada is drawn what is considered the boundary of the Western Shoshone ancestral lands. Some of the other Great Basin tribes, the Washoe and the Paiute, are also indicated. The Western Shoshone are called Niwa in their language, and their homelands are called Niwa Segovia. As you can see, there's a large swath of area, nearly taking up most of the state, considered to be Western Shoshone ancestral lands. In the 1863 Treaty of Ruby Valley, the United States formally recognized Western Shoshone rights to about 60 million acres, covering 4 states, including this large area in Nevada. Let me talk briefly about the Indian Claims Commission for some background. The commission began in 1946 and not completed until 1978, was set up to adjudicate claims by Native Americans against the federal government for various grievances, including land cessation. The Western Shoshone held that the 1863 Ruby Valley Treaty never had them cede their ancestral lands to the United States, and consequently, the U.S. did not have jurisdiction over it. The Indian Claims Commission threatened to extinguish that land title. So, Mary and Carrie Dan asserted their sovereign rights promised through the Ruby Valley Treaty. They began grazing their livestock on what they considered unceded lands without taking out grazing permits from the U.S. Bureau of Land Management. The Bureau of Land Management, or the BLM, like the Indian Claims Commission, was begun also in 1946 by Congress. Its roots are in the 1934 Taylor Grazing Act, which was mandated to regulate cattle grazing on public lands and prevent overgrazing. I have to skip over some of this fascinating history for the sake of time, but as many of you know, the BLM is tasked with a mandate of managing public lands for a variety of uses, such as energy development, livestock grazing, recreation, and timber harvesting, while ensuring natural, cultural, and historic resources are maintained for present and future uses. Currently, the BLM manages 63% of Nevada lands. Now, the Bureau of Land Management took a different view, however, of the Dans grazing on public lands, and both threatened and impounded their livestock. This clash between cultures and government propelled the Western Shoshone, spearheaded by the sisters and supported with the creation of the Western Shoshone Defense Project, through the courts in a number of legal battles. Ultimately, their case ended up in the U.S. Supreme Court and then to the United Nations. The Dan Family Ranch is located in northeast Nevada. You can see the location of the Dan's Ranch on the map, as well as other mining activities, which are indicated on this 1999 map compiled by the Western Shoshone Defense Project. This second image provides a look at the Dan family's ranch, located in northeast Nevada, southwest of Elko, between Battle Mountain and Carlin, near Biawaway, in the Crescent Valley. There's a ridge of mountains to the east of the ranch, part of the Cortez Mountains, which you can see here covered in snow. The ranch is where you can see these trees. Mount Tenabo is located here, which is considered one of the Western Shoshone's sacred places. This is a wonderful, strong black and white image of Mary Dan and her sister Carrie Dan at their ranch, which the photographer Julia Sinugini, and pardon my mispronunciation of her name, took in 1997. The image itself tells such a good story. We see the part of the corral, their dog, the vista of the Great Basin land behind them, and a stormy dark sky above.
Carrie is on the left and Mary on the right. The sisters are dressed probably as they would have been on any day working on the ranch, practical clothes for getting their work done. What I like about this photo is a feeling of connection in time to the Dans and their ranch in Crescent Valley. The Western Shoshone Defense Project was founded in 1991 by the Western Shoshone National Council to provide administrative services for the organization, in addition to providing support services to research, document, and publicize the ongoing legal efforts to advance Western Shoshone sovereignty. It was achieved through collaboration with other alliance and support networks in an attempt to resolve the trespass issues of the Dans in a manner consistent with Western Shoshone traditional values and rights. The Western Shoshone Defense Project had a few paid staff members and quite a few additional volunteers who came and went through the years. Some were Western Shoshone who wanted to help and be part of the work to protect their land, their grazing rights, and their water rights. Others who weren't Niwu came because they were concerned about the fight the Dans were waging and wanted to see justice done. Many people and organizations were concerned about the environment and the effects that mining in the area would bring. As the Dans fight caught national exposure and the word spread, even those living in European countries came to offer their assistance. In this photo, we see both Mary and Carrie and a few of their other staff members in an informal shot. As you all know, mining has been going on in Nevada before it was a state, with the significant discovery of the Comstock lode. As geological exploration in other regions continued, Nevada produced significant amounts of copper, lead, zinc, iron, and tungsten, in addition to precious metals. In 1962, one of the most significant events occurred with the Carlin gold discovery, possibly second only to the discovery of the Comstock in importance to Nevada mining. The Carlin-type microscopic gold deposits, called invisible gold, are embedded in sediments and must be chemically treated and extracted. The Carlin Trend is a belt extending northwest and southeast from the original discovery in northeastern Nevada. Mining in the area took off after the 1980s and is one of the major gold-producing regions of the world, and it sits on the ancestral lands of the Western Shoshone. Oro Nevada Resources, a Canadian mining company, conducted exploratory drilling about 1 mile south of the Dan Ranch, near the hot springs used by the Dans and springs that are of cultural and spiritual significance to the Western Shoshone people. The Western Shoshone National Council attempted to stop their mining activity and was the lead plaintiff in a court case against Oro Nevada. As part of that attempt, and to gain publicity about the company's actions on Niwu Segovia lands, the Defense Project held a peaceful protest outside of Oro's Reno headquarters. While the case ended in a mistrial for the National Council, eventually the company vacated the area. The Cortez Mountains is also home to the Cortez Gold Mine operations, which are jointly held by Barrick Gold Corporation and Newmont Corporation and operated by Barrick. With this Carlin-type microscopic gold, mining is mainly conducted in open pits, with some being underground. The Western Shoshone Defense Project and Great Basin Mine Watch, with the legal assistance of Western Mining Action Project, pursued lawsuits seeking relief from Cortez Gold Mine's proposed mine projects. The Dans and the Western Shoshone Defense Project opposed the projects for several reasons. First was the unresolved land title issue. Next
was the massive amount of dewatering that the mine would require, and the fact that it threatened the most precious and vital resource, water. If you're not familiar with the term dewatering, it is the action of removing groundwater from a mine. When a mine extends below the water table, the groundwater will, due to gravity, infiltrate the mine workings. The most relevant concerns with mine dewatering are related to the possible creation of serious pollution into the groundwater and the general environment of contaminated water from acid mine drainage. In addition to protecting the water in the Cortez Mountain Range, the protection of Mount Tenabo, a culturally significant area, was a major concern. The group sued to stop the Cortez gold mine projects, claiming it would restrict their religious freedom and cause irreversible damage to the land. The Cortez gold mine is currently comprised of the Pipeline, Crossroads, and Cortez Hills open pit mines, and the Cortez Hills underground mine on the flanks of Mount Tenabo. The Western Shoshone Defense Project is a complex story, and this is just a small part of what the collection has to offer. The collection is available online, and we invite you to explore it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Hopefully that short talk gave you a general understanding of the Western Shoshone Defense Project and the Dan sisters' legacy. I would like to mention that sadly, we lost Carrie Dan on January 1st. She didn't have a birth certificate, but she was believed to have been between 86 and 88 years old at the time of her passing. Now let's take a tour through the Western Shoshone Defense Project portion of the exhibit. The images you'll see in the slideshow are in the order that they are presented on the wall, and the narrations are the captions that you would see if you were here to read them in person. After the slideshow, we'll have a few final words about the exhibit. Now let's take a look at the slideshow. Western Shoshone Defense Project Overview. For over 40 years, traditional Western Shoshone ranchers and sisters, Mary and Carrie Dan, helped lead decades-long court battles to reclaim and preserve Shoshone ancestral lands in Nevada. Both sisters upheld the Nui's, Western Shoshone, worldview that they were put on these lands by the Creator with a responsibility to protect and preserve Nui Segovia, Western Shoshone homelands, for future generations. The sisters were raised on the family ranch near Crescent Valley, Nevada. After their parents died, Mary became the manager of the ranching operation. Carrie became politically active with traditional Indian councils and organizations in the protection and preservation of Western Shoshone sovereignty. The Western Shoshone held that the 1863 Treaty of Ruby Valley never ceded their ancestral lands to the United States, and therefore it did not have jurisdiction. With the ongoing threat of land title extinguishment through the Indian Claims Commission and the continued threat of livestock impoundment by the Bureau of Land Management, Mary and Carrie decided to assert their sovereign land rights promised through the Ruby Valley Treaty. This act of defiance and noncompliance towards the United States laws propelled the Western Shoshone's long-standing grievance of land ownership and forced the United States to argue the title to Western Shoshone lands in a number of legal battles. The Western Shoshone National Council created the Western Shoshone Defense Project in 1991 to assist and provide support services to the Dan family against federal government abuses within their homelands. From its inception, Native and non-Native volunteers from activist groups organized to help defend the sisters against these threats. The Dan Ranch and Mount Tenabo landscape. initially focused on prevention of BLM threats towards traditional Western Shoshone cattle ranchers who continued to maintain their livelihood on Western Shoshone lands, project staff was also tasked to expose and counter the geothermal and gold mining industry's destruction of cultural sites and to protect the interests and integrity of ancestral lands and waters through public education, documentation, and action. Sacred Sites. The Western Shoshone Defense Project initiated a community mapping program to assist the Western Shoshone in their efforts to seek U.S. federal designations to other culturally and spiritually significant areas, specifically the Tosawihi Quarries, the largest prehistoric bedrock toolstone quarry in the Great Basin, and Rock Creek. This map, produced in 1991 by the Western Shoshone Defense Project, shows the outline of the Western Shoshone ancestral lands with various gold mining claims noted. Notice the area in northeast Nevada which indicates the location of the Dan Ranch in Crescent Valley. Mining. The Defense Project entered or assisted with lawsuits against mining companies, particularly Oro Nevada Resources and Cortez Gold Mine, with an emphasis given to water resources and environmental degradation. The Oro Protest. Oro Nevada Resources, a Canadian mining company, conducted exploratory drilling about 1 mile south of the Dan Ranch near the hot springs used by the Dans and that are of cultural and spiritual significance to the Western Shoshone people. The project called on supporters to mount a protest at Oro's Reno office on April 30th, 1997, in order to bring publicity about Oro's mining on Western Shoshone ancestral lands. Carrie Dan feared that the continued drilling would affect the valley's water table. About 25 supporters picketed outside the office. The Western Shoshone National Council was the lead plaintiff in the legal case, attempting to stop the mining activity. The council did not proceed with the case, though eventually the company vacated the area. Project staff restored, then fenced the hot springs area and erected this sign. Cortez Gold Mine. The Western Shoshone Defense Project and Great Basin Mine Watch pursued lawsuits seeking relief from Cortez Gold Mine's proposed mine projects for several reasons, including the massive amount of dewatering that the mine would require and the fact that it threatened the area's most precious and vital resource, water. In addition to protecting the surface and groundwater in the Cortez mountain range, the protection of Mount Tenabo, a culturally significant area, was a major concern. Cortez Gold Mine is located in the Crescent Valley area near the Dan Ranch. The Pediment Mine and the Cortez Hills Mine Expansion Project are located at the flank of Mount Tenabo. In addition to the Pipeline Project and Cortez Mine, other Placer Dome mine projects included South Pipeline, Horse Canyon, and Pediment Mine. The Western Shoshone would attempt to halt the expansion because it would cause irreversible damage and prevent the use of the lands for spiritual and religious purposes. The larger and more notable mining companies, particularly those operating on Western Shoshone territory, include Newmont, Placer Dome, Cortez Gold Mines, Barrick, and Oro Nevada Mining Company. Northern Nevada is one of the largest gold provinces in the world, estimated to contain over 240 million ounces of gold. We hope you enjoyed seeing the exhibit images. We realize it's not the same as seeing them in person, but the good news is the exhibit will be up through at least the end of 2021. So we hope to be able to invite you here to the KC to see the exhibit in person and have a glass of lemonade very soon. Thank you again for joining us. See you next time.